So in the first chapter, one of the the important things to do is actually look at what it is that the discipline of economics is. Now, economics as a discipline is really just a study of scarcity. So scarcity would just mean that we have unlimited wants and needs, but only limited resources in which to fulfill those needs. Economics at its purest form is a study of what needs and wants do we actually meet, who gets to have their needs and wants met, how should we allocate resources to meet those needs and wants. It's really just in some sense, it's almost like an engineering problem where we have to think about what is the desired output, what inputs are needed to produce that output. As a discipline, it obviously is a social science, so it looks at how human beings in a societal structure decide what wants and needs to meet. So they also talk about the trade-off. What does having one want met, let's say for large cars, what does that mean in terms of the sacrifice in terms of education, or the sacrifice in terms of clean drinking water? Or the other way, what does clean drinking water, what does that cost us in terms of other resources? How much more could we mine? How much more could we drill oil if we were willing to sacrifice some clean water? Now, economics as a discipline, at least the way that we're looking at it, is only a discipline that's about 250 years old. One of the fathers of modern economics would be Adam Smith, who in 1776 wrote a book called The Theory of Wealth and Nations, a text that was pretty transformative in terms of looking at the question of why are some countries rich and why are some countries poor, in starting to lay the outlines of what the discipline of economics looks like. Now, the kind of economics we actually see today is largely informed by an economist whose last name is Marshall, who wrote one of the first economics textbooks and outlined formally what the discipline would look like. So as you can kind of see from that very brief overview, it's actually a relatively young discipline. Now, one of the things that we also need to kind of keep in mind here is that the discipline of economics isn't homogeneous. It's not like uniform in its structure. Rather, there's actually a lot of philosophical differences. So there are paradigms, P-A-R-A-D-I-G-M. There are paradigms, or kind of philosophical viewpoints of how things exist. And the kind that we're actually going to be looking at in this course is going to be two kinds. The first is going to be called neoclassical. So we're going to look at something called neoclassical economics. It comes about starting in the late 19th century, so the late 1800s. And because this is a macroeconomics class, we're also going to spend a lot of time looking at the Keynesians, who are from John Maynard Keynes. Curious fact, Adam Smith, John Maynard Keynes, both born on June 5th, which is also my birthday. So we could also see Smith and Keynes as being born on my birthday, rather than me being born on Keynes' birthday, who was born on Smith's birthday. The focus on neoclassical economics and Keynesian economics, unfortunately, is not given a lot of treatment in the textbook, but I'd like you to keep that in mind, that there are differences among economists. There are Marxist economists. I'm not one. I don't want to give them poor treatment here, but if you're interested in Marxist economics, send me an email. there's some good books out there that can be read. There's one called Marxism For and Against. Some of you might be interested in Austrian economics. Austrian economics, it's becoming more popular now that the sort of as the response to Obama, and Austrian economics tends to be taken up by those who are very right-leaning in terms of their political beliefs. Ron Paul would be a classic Austrian believer. If you're interested in Austrian economics, again, send me an email. I can direct you to some resources. For those who study Marxist economics, they actually tend to congregate at one school, University of Massachusetts, Amherst. Those who like to study Austrian economics tend to congregate at George Mason University. Lots of these little differences, but for the most part, most economists, including myself, would be a neoclassical and a Keynesian. Now, it's not just me, though, that's kind of just pushing my beliefs on you here in terms of neoclassical Keynesianism. It is the vast majority of the discipline. And that's just the way that the discipline is. My apologies if you don't necessarily believe in that, but it is the standard philosophy that economists espouse, at least here in the United States. But if you have strong beliefs in terms of Austrian and Marxist economics, my apologies, you're not going to be completely satisfied, but I'll try to do my best. Okay, the neoclassical Keynesian economists then would then basically, when we look at types of economics, there's certainly the belief system, but then there's also a way where you could see them, a person as doing microeconomics versus macroeconomics. And in microeconomics versus macroeconomics, microeconomics would be what's covered in Principles of Economics 2. It looks at how individual consumers, how individual firms make decisions. Macroeconomics, which is the focus of this course, is looking at how societies as a whole make decisions. And more specifically, again, we focus on prices, production, and unemployment. So we have, neoclassical economists is one type of economist. We have microeconomists and macroeconomists is another type of economist. But then they also make these statements, statements that we can break down into positive economic statements versus normative economic statements. A positive economic statement is like a statement of fact. Sky is blue, right? I can falsify that statement or find it true. Or my car is from the year 2001, right? It's either true or not, right? And it can be proven true or false. But if I said that my car is fast, that can't be proven true or false, right? Because my perception of fast is different than someone else's perception of fast. Or taking it to economics. If I say the unemployment rate is 7%, that's different than saying the unemployment rate is too high. To say it's 7% can be proven true or false, thus making it a positive economic statement. Whereas if I say the unemployment rate is too high, you can't prove that true or false, right? It's low compared to Spain, right? But it's obviously high compared to Canada, which I think theirs is lower than ours. Okay, I'm going to pause I'm actually going to stop the video here to keep these in smaller chunks, and then we'll pick it up with part 2 for this coverage of chapter 1.